All right, this was a suggestion. Somebody asked me to talk about an ESP, what it is and how it works and all that, what you can do with it. So I wrote a presentation on what I thought was important, but I may not get to everybody's questions, but you can ask questions. That'll work. First of all, what is an ESP? It's an EFI system partition. And these are the characteristics that they have in order to be an ESP. It's got to be on a disk that's readable by the BIOS. Can't be some strange thing. That generally means AHCI or NVMe, sometimes IDE disks. Newer systems recognize NVMe, they can read that. Older systems don't. It's got to be in a primary partition. It cannot be on an unpartitioned disk. It's got to be on a partitioned disk, and it has to be a primary partition.
On a GPT disk, is that
Even on a GPT disk, yes.
Okay. I don't know the difference between a primary on a GPT and something else.
Nobody's probably ever seen anything that's not a primary on a GPT
Oh,
disk.
okay.
They're all primaries.
They're all
Well, there's 128 slots for primary partitions.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can't have secondary containers, but people don't usually do that because there's so many primary
Okay.
partitions.
I see.
Most BIOS only require it to be a primary partition. There are some BIOS out there that require it to be the first primary partition, or it won't even see it. Okay? In that partition, it's got to have a BIOS readable file system. Most BIOS will accept any FAT. That means FAT12, FAT16, FAT32. There are some BIOS out there, very few, that require it to be FAT32. So if you've got one of those, you've got to be in the first primary partition, and it's got to be FAT32. It has to have an EFI boot directory. Okay, that's one of the main things. And in that directory, it's got to have BIOS executable boot files. If all those things are present, it's an ESP.
Does it have a distinct partition type?
On it,
like EXE
yes. There's supposed to be a distinct partition type, but I have yet to see a BIOS that cares.
No, I was just curious whether it's not.
In fact, on an MBR disk, the first partition up there is type EF. That's the EFI partition type on an MBR disk.
Okay.
And it's a primary, and it's in the first slot. On a GPT disk, the type is EFI system. Okay, and it's in the first slot on my GPT disk as well.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what's in your EFI boot partition. You've got OS2 creates this EFI OS2 stuff where we put backups of everything, and then the EFI boot directory, that's what the BIOS actually uses. This file right here, boot x64, that's a special file used by the BIOS as a fallback. It's not normally used. When we set up the system, we boot this one right here, OS2 loader EFI. We point to that one and we use that one.
This is from an OS2 only system?
This is an OS2 only system, pretty much the only kind of systems I have.
Okay. I
So
have
the
others.
files in the OS2 directory basically duplicate what is in
They're backups. They're backups. We have them there as backups. And there's some extra things here. There's your security certificates if you want to set up secure boot. Okay.
So it's also possible with BIOSes that support security?
Yes.
With certificates?
Yes. This particular layout does not use the launcher. This boots to OS2 directly. This particular layout uses the launcher. See, the launcher EFI is now in the OS2 boot. And of course, this is a backup file. The way I designed this is, even though we point to this one and we use this one, I make this special BIOS file the same. See, that's the same file as the launcher. In case something happens and the BIOS falls back to it, it still works as you would expect.
So you copied the launcher.efi into boot x64?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's what we do.
And then this configuration just forwards the further work to the OS2 directory, to this OS2 loader EFI, the launcher
launcher.
The launcher, yes, the launcher knows where to find the OS2 loader stuff. Yeah, it knows where to find that. So then this actually, but that's no longer, well, I guess technically it is the BIOS still doing it, but the BIOS is what loads and runs this. And then this is a program. It's a BIOS environment program, and it knows to go here and find all this stuff and then boot OS2.
And you tell it in the BIOS actually to boot that thing,
Yes,
right?
you do. Yes.
And what about those security certificates? Could you just explain that briefly, or?
There is a way to import one of these into the BIOS so that secure boot works.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay. I turned that off.
I turned it off too.
We will basically check that the contents of this directory is authentic and everything. This is the
Who-
purpose. The BIOS will check using this, or what is?
No, the BIOS BIOS will look for a partition, a primary partition that has the correct format that it can read, and then it looks for an EFI boot directory, and then it looks, well, actually, it doesn't even do that. Not when you're booting. Not when you're booting. How the ESP is actually used, BIOS has something we call BIOS variables. There's a whole list of variables in the BIOS that essentially tell the BIOS where to look for the boot files. And actually it'll point to a specific boot file. So when we install Arca OS, I create a BIOS variable that points to either the launcher EFI or the AOS loader EFI. So that it points directly at that file, so the BIOS knows to go load that file and run it.
And that's the thing you can set in your BIOS configuration thing. It'll make a tree of that stuff, and you can pick to have the launcher launch.
The tree that you see, I think I know what you're talking about, is just a visual output of the BIOS variables.
Right, because I have multiple OSs, so.
Yeah, and every OS will create its own BIOS variable and point it at its own loader. And which one of those variables you pick to load from, to boot from, that's the one the BIOS will go and read and run. And then whatever happens from there is whatever that loader does.
David, company here. I'm from the primitive era of computers, and I understood BIOS to mean something in the firmware.
Correct.
But this is not firmware.
Correct,
This
it
right,
is.
it's software.
It is.
Could you explain that distinction to me, please?
There is no distinction. BIOS is firmware.
It's in silicon.
Yes. Yes.
This is not. This is a readable file on the disk.
The ESP is not BIOS. The ESP is it's on the disk. It's files on the disk.
Right, that's what I say.
These are
But
the-
my understanding of BIOS in the days when I started computing was it was
ESP is not BIOS.
He's saying the firmware in a UFE BIOS points to, has variables, and those variables
Right.
point to files in this.
The
partition.
firmware will go find this ESP and load and run files in it. Essentially, a UEFI BIOS has an operating system. It has a full-blown operating system. It has device drivers and everything.
David, I think that Jeffrey is confused about where the BIOS variables are stored. How they're written, specifically to where. Because the BIOS is read-only itself.
Yes, but BIOS has
The
access
BIOS
to
variables are stored in NVRAM.
Maybe, maybe not.
Oh, okay,
Wherever the BIOS wants to put them.
okay.
Some
Point
BIOS
taken.
use EEROM, storage,
Right.
or some use
Right.
NVRAM. It's wherever it wants. You don't know. All you know is that the BIOS
Just
saves
like when
it.
you store your other configuration settings
It
in the
saves it
BIOS,
somewhere.
they're stored somewhere.
All right,
Okay,
even
so
old BIOS.
That's why you have that little clear battery in it.
So
All BIOS
I've
have.
got a hard drive, and I turn the computer on, and it says, "What do you want to boot from?" That is stored.
Take the hard
Chip.
drive out, turn the computer on, what does it say?
It depends what the condition
It
is.
says
The
no
hard-
boot device found. That message is coming from the BIOS.
Which is on a chip, on a
Correct.
board.
And those BIOS variables are stored on a chip.
Yeah, they're stored on
How
a
do you
chip.
write to a chip from the software?
Just like when you tell your BIOS whether you want your video mode to be expanded or not expanded, or you want to set your
Date and time.
The BIOS has
date and time.
Okay,
The
Or
system has,
non-lock status or whatever.
the
So-
system has the ROM in it, which has the BIOS software, the code, and it's also got lots of other chips. It's got clock chips in it. It's got non-volatile storage chips in it, whether
But
that's
it's a ROM, it's a
battery-backed
read-only memory.
RAM or
The
whether that's a
BIOS is
EEPROM
ROM,
or
but-
whatever it is.
But David is just explaining that the settings that you store in your setup are written to writable memory in silicon.
Non-volatile.
Yeah,
Correct.
some sort of
Memory
non-volatile
backup,
memory.
On the motherboard.
On the
Yes. On the
motherboard.
motherboard.
So you're
Yes.
not writing to something on the hard drive?
Not
No.
yet.
No.
The BIOS
The BIOS
are
variables
stored-
are not on the hard drive.
No.
They're in the system silicon somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then these variables, the BIOS reads them, and it knows where to find the files on the disk. Then it goes to the disk and reads the file and runs it in the BIOS, in the UEFI environment. It's a special environment. Okay? Getting back to ESPs though, how many ESPs can be on a system?
Any number?
Lots and lots, as many as you want.
An infinite number.
Technically speaking, as many as you want.
Oh, wow.
How many should you have? One. Things get very confusing very fast if you have more than one.
I have 3 on this machine,
Oh.
so,
I'm confused before we start.
Yeah.
Shoot
Well,
self-
well, the thing is, as long as your BIOS variables point to the right places, you can have 3 operating systems with 3 ESPs with BIOS variables pointing to each one. Or you can have everything all in one ESP, which is the most common and normal way to do it, and your BIOS variables just point at the different files in the same ESP.
I mean, mine points to launcher,
Yeah,
and then launcher puts up a little menu and asks me which one I want to boot.
I'll get to that.
Okay.
If you like installed Linux, Linux would create EFI / whatever, SUSE or whatever, and it had put all of its own files in there. Windows does the same thing. You have EFI / Windows. Excuse me. Windows put all of its files there. Okay? And it will probably also overwrite something in OS2 boot. Some operating systems do, some don't. Some just rely on pointing. Some operating systems would just point at this file here rather than use the one in EFI boot. That's fine. The BIOS doesn't care where the file is as long as it's on a primary partition in a BIOS readable file system, all that stuff. It can find it, load it, and run it. Okay? How big should an ESP be? This is a question that we have gotten in the past. The correct answer is big enough to hold your files. How big is that? If you look at, let me see if I can back up again. For OS2, how much space do we need? That's not even a megabyte. Not much. Windows puts a whole lot of crap in there. They need a little bit more. Linux is not so much. But in general, ESP is usually a couple hundred megabytes. And that's what we create when we create it. Can you back up an ESP? Yes. The real question is, can you restore it?
Maybe.
Maybe.
You need another computer.
Yes, you can restore it.
And expect it to still work? Only if you put it right back in the same place exactly as it was.
What do you mean? What do you mean by the same partition?
The same exact partition on the same disk in the
Okay.
same place.
location. Because the BIOS
Because the
variable is going to
BIOS
be pointing.
It has to point, knows where it is. And the BIOS variables point at a disk number, a certain block address of the partition, and then a file name.
So do you have to match the BIOS have to appear in the exact same set of blocks?
No.
In the restore? Okay,
No.
all right.
But you have to match the partition size. If you delete the partition and you want to restore it.
I think you can resize it.
It's best to not do stuff like that.
Yeah.
The reason for all these questions is so I can say no a whole bunch of times.
Okay, going for the territory.
Can you move or rename files in the ESP?
Not recommended.
You shouldn't.
Sure, you can do that.
You can.
Yeah, it just
You
won't,
sh-
might
you
not
shouldn't.
boot.
It's a free country, it just doesn't.
Here's an interesting one. Can you take that disk and move it to another slot? In other words, if you got 2 disks in the system and one has the ESP on it, can you swap them?
I got into trouble.
No, you can't.
Ooh.
Because the BIOS variables point to a disk number, a block address, and a file name.
What's the block address mean?
Block address at the beginning of the file system.
Okay.
So at that block address, the BIOS expects to have a fat file system there. If it goes to disk 3 and goes to block whatever, and there's not a fat file system there, it's not.
So the disk is divided into blocks.
Basically a disk these days is just a series of blocks. It's a stream of blocks. We kind of still keep the cylinders, heads, and sectors thing for some things, but it's really not used. It hasn't been used for a long time. It's just a straight block from block 0 to block n. However
Is that
big the
how
disk is.
OS2 works also?
Yeah, that's how OS2 works too. Just straight block address. Can the ESP be moved? Obviously not. If it's got to be on a certain disk at a certain block address, no, you can't move it. Otherwise, you can move it, but then the BIOS variables won't find it. You'd have to update all that. You've got this whole chain of things you've got to update. I'm going to talk about the launcher config file because that is the one file you can edit on the disk. You can change that one. This one, not this one.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the backup.
I edited my launcher config and it's still not showing my new
It
drive.
don't work, huh? Yeah, you change this one, it's not going to do. This is the one that actually gets used when you boot.
But I
Okay.
noticed those are two different sizes.
Yeah, one is the default, the
This is-
default one, and the other one has been edited.
This one's been edited, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this is what's in the launcher config. This is that menu that you bring up when you bring up the launcher. This is it. This is what creates that menu, and you can edit that. You can change what name shows up. You can change what drive it boots from, and obviously you can see we point to EFI OS2 OS loader EFI. We point to that file. That's what the that's what's going to get
And then
loaded.
the second one is what? The star? What is
That means anything. What does that exactly do?
It's gonna bring up a list of drives.
That's right, it brings up a list, right.
Huh.
And here's some options you can set for the launcher. Like which one is your default timeouts, the size of the
Is
thing.
one the first one or the second one? It's the
I
first
assume
one.
it's the first one.
Yeah.
I always start everything with 0, but not everybody
Yeah,
does
right.
that.
Pretty weird how it starts
How would
with
you
one.
edit this? It's not visible to the operating system.
Yeah, it is. It's in the
It is.
it's in the ESP.
I
Uh-huh.
have a drive letter to it and
Yeah.
just edit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did it
Oh,
on mine.
I didn't mention that, but you can assign a drive letter to the
You
ESP.
assign a drive letter,
Yeah, we made it like wide or something. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually make it Y, exactly.
That's
And-
what it does during its startup, right?
That's
Yeah,
the
it
question
does.
you're gonna be asking every time you wonder why.
We typically tell people not to keep a drive letter assigned all the time.
It doesn't really matter. It uses up a drive letter.
Yeah, but you don't want to accidentally start writing stuff to that
Yes.
ESP.
Yes, especially if you got several operating
Store some
systems.
PDFs on it.
If you have several operating systems
JPEGs.
installed, you know, it takes a lot to recover that stuff.
So now it's the ones in boot that boot?
Yes,
Okay, I'm just looking at mine, so.
yes, it's the one, oh, you're looking at yours, good. Yeah,
it
it's the
has-
one,
It
that-
has multiple OSs, so.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And by the way, how hard it would be to make it remember your last choice, because this is what I needed recently.
You're talking about launcher stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. But it's
That's a Dixie app.
This is
That's-
something you did, right? I
That's
mean,
it's not something I did. That's not my domain, no.
That's,
okay.
that's Dixie's,
Dixie's work.
Yeah.
Because I needed it to stick to Windows for instance, when it
You
powers
can set
up.
the default.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be the default choice. I just wanted to remember my last choice and boot it straight.
That would require storing something somewhere.
Yeah,
Mm.
or adjusting this file like while booting or
Well,
something.
it has a timer, so if you set it for defaults and wait until the timeout.
Yeah, but
it works,
if you're
but
doing
it
an
will always
automated
boot the,
reboot,
from the
Yeah.
default partition, and I
you
wanted to
do want it to be
remember
the
my
last
last
one,
choice.
okay.
Yeah, that's.
You know,
Yeah, you're gonna cover this later though.
not
I
the
mean,
one
it
you
should
want.
be doable.
It should be doable, but it's just, it's this, launcher is not meant to be all-purpose boot
I was
manager.
just
It's-
gonna say.
It's supposed to be a
discuss
tiny
that.
little quick and dirty thing just to get the job
Yeah.
done until you install your own boot manager that does everything you want.
Now, my boot
Like,
How do
partition,
I do that in this setup then? Because something like air boot is
I
not
think you're gonna go
compatible.
for that, right?
Refine.
Yeah.
So refine.
That's
gives
gonna
you
be a
lot more
different
options
presentation.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
It gives you different options.
I'm
than
just
this.
talking about how the ESP works and how all that.
now my boot directory has boot.spi, and that's all that's in there.
Your which directory?
On my EFI partition,
Yeah,
it has a boot directory and an EFI directory. In the boot directory, it only has a file called boot.
I don't know.
That is a Windows thing. The boot directory, that's Windows put that there. That's
Oh, I
just
thought you
Windows.
said boot was the.
No.
EFI
it's
boot.
slash boot.
Oh,
EFI/boot,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry,
Okay. In Mini LVM, which is the installation volume manager, in the system menu, there's a submenu called boot menu. You can install and remove. This refers to AN launcher. If you click install, it will install AN launcher. If you remove this, it will remove AN launcher. That's how you should do it, not diddle with the files in the ESP manually. If you want to create your EFI system partition, in other words, you got a brand new disk, this is how you should do it. You should use this thing, because then it will create it all with all the right things. It'll make it a primary partition. It'll make sure everything's set properly with the proper types and everything, and it makes it 256 megabytes.
Yeah, a
And will
reasonable
will
size.
it find the other OSs and incorporate them?
No,
This is if you want to create a new one, which means you have nothing. You have a blank disk,
Gotcha,
empty,
okay.
nothing on it yet. You can go through the steps of manually creating the volume, creating the partition and all that. This will do everything in one step.
Does this come up when you first install Arca OS?
If you have a blank disk, you're going to have to create partitions on
This
it
will
before
come
you
up.
can even
well,
get.
when you get to the volume selection page in the installer,
This will
you'll
come-
have to click the button to manage volumes, because you need to create
And that
volumes.
brings
It
us
will
up.
not let you continue without creating an
You can't
EFI
continue
partition,
without
as far as I
creating.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it won't let you continue without creating both the ESP and something to install to. So you're gonna have to create them both. You got the little drop-down menus, you got the ESP on the right-hand side, you got your
Yeah.
target volume on the left-hand side, you gotta have them both.
And if it's a blank disk, it's going to be blank.
Yes.
You won't be able to select an ESP.
Right.
And you'll have to use the manage volumes button, which brings that up.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And
And
it
this,
only
yeah,
creates it on the first drive.
We only
yes,
created on
we
the
only
first
created
drive.
on the first drive, yes, yes. Both Mini LVM and the installer use my utility, ESP util, to do all this magic. That's what manages all this stuff. It creates the BIOS variables, it populates and verifies and does everything to the ESP. That's what it does. It'll format it, does all of that for you. You could run it manually, or you can run it using the GUI with Mini LVM.
The mini LVM's on the system maintenance folder?
Yep, yep.
That's the
Yeah, yeah,
installation.
it's
Installation
Installation
Volume
Volume Manager. We call it Mini LVM for short because that's its actual file name.
And now there's only one of them, too. That's good.
Well, we just
Oh.
moved
There
the
used to be
object to
two.
the
Let
advanced.
me say something about that. There used to be two volume managers. There was this one, Mini LVM, the graphical one. I think Alex is responsible for this one. And then there was the advanced one. For UEFI installations, there is only one that works.
Correct.
This
Oh.
one is the only one that understands
Yeah.
ESPs, understands GPT structures. The other ones do not.
The
They
other
won't
one's
work.
Java applet that we inherited from IBM.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why we also include that, because Mini LVM does not handle spanned JFS volumes. So if you want to span your volumes,
Yeah.
you need to use the
Yeah, well,
other, we won't talk about.
yeah, let's not do
JFS
any
volumes.
spanning.
Not
We don't need to do that anymore.
thank God.
When we only had 5 megabyte disk sizes,
Yeah.
that was a different story. And I had a 5 megabyte disk. That was the first hard disk I ever used, was 5 megabytes.
I
Yeah,
couldn't
me
afford
too.
10.
And it was this big.
Right, it was the size of the computer that he
Yeah,
has.
and you had to carry it around and drop it in this gigantic hard drive, and you drop it into magnetic, bang, yeah. I used one of those.
Good chunk.
Okay. So, in general, just as a refresher, how do you fix stuff? Never try and fix ESP files manually. That's great advice. Don't ever go around there and diddle with stuff. Always use whatever tools are provided by your OS to manipulate files in ESP. And you never use one operating system to manipulate files of another operating system. That's a recipe for disaster. If you need to fix Linux stuff, use the Linux tools. If you need to fix Arca OS stuff, use the Arca OS tools. If you need to fix Windows stuff, use the Windows tools. Okay, so if you really screw stuff up, go to your operating system. Don't try to manually do stuff because it's so complicated. Okay, for Arca OS, use mini LVM or ESP util. That will make sure all the BIOS variables point to the right places, all the files are in the right place. Every time you run any ESP manipulation tools, whether you run it manually with the command line tool or whether you use the graphic mini LVM, it verifies and updates the files in your ESP on
And do
Arca
these
OS.
two things only know about OS2 stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, ESP util does look for other operating systems in the ESP, only so it can add them to the launcher menu.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing it does. It tries and find those EFI files that are bootable, and if it finds them, it tries to figure out what operating system they're for, and then it will add them to the launcher menu.
I have
That's the
6
only thing it does.
6 EFI files.
Yeah. Okay. And that's it for the ESP stuff, unless there's more questions.
It builds that menu dynamically off
Yes.
of the list of,
It,
because it ends up with this old underscore x64,
yes.
which I believe is Windows.
Yes, and
I don't know why it changed.
let me go back here.
Because.
Okay, and here's why that is. Because there usually is one of these in an ESP. If the ESP already exists, there is one of these. This is the BIOS fallback bootloader, okay? And when we install Arca OS, rather than destroying stuff, rather than just overwriting that willy-nilly, we make a backup of that and then install our own stuff. So the backup is that old x64.
So on a Windows machine, like I believe the sequence on this was it came with Windows, I shrank the partition, I believe installed OS2. Let's say I did
Yeah,
that.
so this one would be the Windows thing.
Right, so then it renamed it to old x64 and that's what shows up in the menu.
And
Okay.
yeah, old x64, and then we add that to the launcher menu so that
Right,
you
and
can,
that should boot Windows, except
It
then I
should.
installed Ubuntu and I can't boot Windows directly anymore.
and then everything went to.
I have to boot it from Ubuntu.
Yeah, okay. That's a good question.
Because Ubuntu was being very helpful to you to
As it often is,
allow
yeah.
you to boot Windows.
Anything else? Questions?
No, this is helpful, really.
I meant it to be. I hope it was, yes.
So the recommendation is do not move the files, do not touch the files.
Yeah.
But we can edit the CFG
You can
files.
edit the launcher CFG
Okay,
if you want
those
to,
launcher.
if there's if there's a need to. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, use the tools to do ESP manipulations. Don't try and do it manually. I don't even do it manually. I always use the tools to do it.
So if you're running it on the metal though, it's fine to go into the volume manager and say, just take out the boot of the launcher.
Yeah. You can. I don't remember where that was.
Almost.
There was a.
Yeah, if you're on a UEFI system, if you go to the system boot menu and
Yeah,
remove
I'm on it right now.
it'll remove it.
Yep.
And there's a nice feature that ESP util does, is it remembers your choice. So that if you go again in something else, needs to be updated, it's not gonna put the launcher back for you if you have manually removed it.
Nice.
It
Is
writes
that
it-
something that requires a reboot then? Why, 'cause you find out next time you reboot? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And
If you're not on a UFI system, if you're on a regular traditional system, this will add and remove air boot. Same menu, with just different functions because you're in a
and
different environment.
when you choose the remove door, it removes the launcher.EFI?
It will, yes. It changes this layout, where you got the launcher here, to this layout.
Okay.
It'll actually move the files around and reset the BIOS variables.
And then boot x64 will become the boot.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
It
well,
becomes
I have a-
this.
I have a question,
Yeah.
because I just did that, removed it, and now I've got,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing you're
That's
talking about, the star?
That's the
That's the
OS2
start.
loader menu. That's your
Yeah.
volume menu.
okay, so you can't just get past this at all.
Well, you can.
So then I got a video memory can't be reallocated ever,
Yeah.
so
What?
Did you,
now I've just got the thing that says I can't move the video memory, and it's gotten me into the diagnostic menu.
Okay.
did you select your boot menu from that? The actual boot, boot drive, cause there's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you glad you came to Warpstock?
Anyway, yeah, removing the launcher only rearranges these files. That's all it does. So that you boot directly into the OS2 loader.
But does it leave all that OS2 stuff in there?
Yeah, the backup's always still the same.
Okay.
Yeah. It just basically copies, the files from the backup into the active area. That's really all it does.
Yeah. I think this was actually addressed, but somebody asked on the, thing here, so I just wanna make sure that it was addressed for them. UEFI with MBR disks should work with the old LVM, which would be, what we call the advanced ones, which, yes, if you're using,
UEFI works with MBR disks. I do it all the time.
yeah, well, but he's at, it's his specific question is UEFI MBR using not mini LVM. The,
maxi LVM.
yeah, the advanced works with the
It's
advanced.
not recommended.
We don't recommend it, but it does work. It doesn't,
I'm not sure what's the difference.
The one that spans.
Oh,
Spans.
the old,
Yeah.
Old LVM.
the
Yeah.
old,
Yeah, sure, it works, yeah.
It'll work, but it has no knowledge of anything ESP.
it has nothing, no knowledge.
If you try to create an ESP with it, it will create a FAT partition. You can create a FAT partition, but not a type EF partition. You
Yeah,
still need
the
to
BIOS
change the
don't really
type.
care about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first started all this stuff, we thought it cared, we thought it mattered, type EF. I haven't yet to see a BIOS that
Yeah.
cares. You
So,
can-
yeah, technically you could use, the Java, volume manager.
But why?
Well,
Why, exactly?
Yeah, but why? Right.
It's
Why?
just not designed for the modern world.
Yeah,
Right, you could use it.
this'll the mini LVM handles everything that we need it to handle, and
Yeah.
it makes sure that you don't.
And the
screw
other
things
thing
up.
that's very important is that we don't test the old volume manager
We don't.
against our stuff.
We don't, no,
It's as is.
yeah.
It's, it's just
Well, I
what we like to
accidentally
call a
tested it, but-
convenience feature.
What's
If you
that?
have a
I
need to
accidentally
run
tested
it,
it, but,
we provide it with
Yeah,
the
it
operating
works,
system.
but-
We don't
Yeah.
test it.
Support, yeah.
Well, there's a couple things that are unique to Arca OS that you need to be concerned about. One is GPT disks.
Yeah.
Because the way we do those is kind of unique to us. And the other thing, what was the other thing? The other thing is ESP management, yeah. And the BIOS variables. The other
Yeah,
thing.
there's no
won't-
other tool that handles.
There's no
it.
other tool that'll create the BIOS variables for you.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can create the ESP, that doesn't mean the BIOS knows how to find the files.
You can use the BIOS program to do that, right?
Sometimes.
if there is one.
Yeah, not,
No,
they're
no,
not.
I mean, when you boot up, you can go into the setup, and there's a boot
Yeah,
thing.
in this machine,
Not
but
all
not
machines
every
have that
manufacturer
function.
No,
does
usually that's not there, usually you can't.
All right.
You need some way to get in there to do it.
An ESP util is our way.
ESP util is our way, yeah.
And
That-
it's quite effective.
So,
It works.
ESP
I tried to write it so it's
util,
foolproof. I tried to write it
Yeah.
so that no matter what, it can fix it.
I tried to use the ones on other operating systems, and they're not nearly as simple to use, they're confusing. The ones on Windows are probably a little less confusing than the ones that are already fine,
There's-
but, oh my gosh.
While you're mentioning that, there's one other thing that I failed to mention. In the ESP, in the system partition, I said these are backup files. And I told you that when you run ESP util, it always verifies. It verifies that it's fat. It verifies that if it needs to, it runs a check disk on it. It verifies that the directories are all there. It verifies all files are there. And where does it get them to update them? They're on your hard disk in your Arca OS partition. I think it's in sys install UEFI. That's where it gets those files from, and it puts them on in the ESP.
Nice.
Yeah, Windows puts a ton of files
Yeah.
in there.
A lot of, several EFIs.
Yeah, and it's recovery stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of diagnostic and recovery stuff in addition to the boot stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I use a bootable Linux hard drive for backups, and their solution for creating a hard drive is to make one FAT32 partition, all 2 terabytes, and make that the EFI system partition, and store Linux and all the backups on
You
it.
can do that. It'll
Yeah.
work.
It was.
I wouldn't do
It didn't
that.
work as well as, it didn't work that well. It didn't work that
I wouldn't
well.
do
It
that.
did not work that well.
Okay.
Doesn't seem stable. No, I don't recommend it.
Anything else? No? Then let's take 5 minutes and we'll come back and talk about drivers.
Okay. So I want to ask something about hotel rooms.
Let's,
You want to do that now or later?
let's do that after the break before David starts his talk.
Or after David's talk?
Or
We have
after
all
David's
afternoon
talk.
to give.
Yeah, let's do it after.
Sure.
It concerns anybody who